Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my kitchen. Once again, we are going to make some bread dough, and ultimately we are going to make cinnamon rolls later on today. So this is probably going to be a 2 or 3 part video because there's lots of steps and we have to wait in between those steps. So first off, we are going to take some dried yeast and we are going to put a tablespoon into our bowl. And to that, we are going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar. So yeast is a living organism, and we are going to bring it back to life by putting in this sugar, which is what it needs to eat, and some water. So the water needs to be warm, not hot. And the way we test this is on our wrist. And if it's comfortable on your wrist, then it is good to go. So we're going to add that to our bowl of yeast and sugar, and we're going to give this a stir. And it needs flour also to build, we call it a proof. So we're going to put in 2 cups of flour. Now a lot of people use high gluten flour because it has the proteins in it that make the bread dough really stretchy. A lot of us don't have high gluten flour at home right now. We have all-purpose, which works just as good as high gluten. Here we go. There's 2 cups. I'm using my ½ cup scoop. So we got 4 of those in there, and I'm going to stir this all together. Now normally I would give this a couple of minutes after we stir it to get the yeast going. But because I don't want this video to go on for too long because it takes forever to upload, I'm not going to do that. But you can already see that there are some bubbles going on there. That is the yeast coming to life and doing its work. So what it does is when it eats that sugar of the actual sugar and the white flour, it produces carbon dioxide, and that is what makes your bread dough rise. So I'm going to just mix out a couple of these lumps here. So I started baking bread, I was probably around 12. I found a recipe in a Good Housekeeping magazine, one of the magazines that my mom got regularly when I was a child. And that recipe was a little bit different. It called for scalded milk and a little more sugar. It was actually a pretty sweet bread dough. And I used to make that for my family. And then I progressed into cinnamon rolls, which are just really, really, really good. And as a 12-year-old, I appreciated the ooey gooey brown sugar sweetness of them. So I've got this all stirred together, and like I said, normally I would let this sit in proof for a couple of minutes until we got more of those bubbles going, but I don't have the time today because, like I said, I don't want this video to go on too long. So I am going to start adding more flour. And I'm going to start with some whole wheat. If you don't have whole wheat at home, that's fine. You can do all white flour. But I'm going to put in 1 cup of whole wheat. Again, I'm using my ½ cup measure. And I'm going to add a little more of my all-purpose, 2 more cups, or 1 more cup of my all-purpose. So this is a total of 2 cups of flour. I'm going to add, it equals probably about ½ a teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to give this a stir. So bread dough is really easy. It's really just yeast, sugar for it to eat, and flour and a little bit of salt. I add some melted butter for an oil just to give it, just to make it a richer dough. So I have, sometimes I use vegetable oil, sometimes I even use, if I'm making a pizza dough, I'll use olive oil. But today I am going to add the butter, and I've got some melted butter already here. I got a 1/4 cup. Put that in and stir it. And ultimately what we want to do is get all the flour incorporated. And we're just going to keep adding flour until we can manage it with our hands, because kneading the dough comes next. And kneading is basically just pounding the dough, moving it around, and getting the proteins in the flour working so that you have the stretchiness going for you. And just that cohesiveness that you want in a bread dough instead of having it, or in bread instead of having it crumbly, I guess. I don't know exactly the right word for that. So we got this all going together. I'm going to add a little bit more white flour because I want to get it to the point where I can get my hands in there without getting them completely covered with dough. But the fun part of this is that you can use your hands. And you get in there and really just stir it up. And I have always kneaded the dough right inside my bowl because, truth be told, I'm very good at making messes, but I hate cleaning those messes up, and I hate having a mess on my countertop. So I will take it out today though, so you can actually see how this works. Get these out of the way so you can see. Get a good amount of flour on my countertop. Spread it out. And I'm going to dump my bread dough right onto the counter. So this recipe generally makes 2 medium-sized loaves, and it makes a good sized pan of cinnamon rolls, as you will see later on. So this is kneading. You basically grab from the opposite side and push in with your hands. And turn every single time so that the dough is evenly worked. And it just feels nice and soft and squishy, and I'm going to add more flour to my countertop because it's starting to stick to the countertop. And you can actually put a little bit of flour on the top of it and it's a good arm workout. Knead and knead and knead and turn, and you get into a nice little rhythm. If you're feeling angry, you can punch it a few times. Get all your frustrations out on your dough. At this point, it's perfectly fine to do that. Now, if you have ever made biscuits or cookies or anything like that, they always, cookies that are rolled out, they always say don't work the dough too much because it gets tough. Well, in bread, that's what you're going for. So it's generally, I don't know, a couple minutes of kneading because I get bored. But the more you knead it, the more stretchy your dough will get. And you can see that this just has the 1 cup of whole wheat. So it just has a nice golden brown color. You can do more whole wheat if you want. You can do less. You can add oats to your dough. You can add wheat germ, anything that you would like to add. Okay, it's getting there. You can see the stretchiness going on. And it just, another go through. And then you take a bowl, and again, just because I don't like cleaning things, and I don't like wasting having to clean more than one thing, I'm just going to use the bowl that I mixed it in. I'm going to put my dough in, and I'm going to cover that with a wet dishcloth, and I'm going to let it sit. And it's going to double in size. And once that happens, we will be able to take it and make it into our cinnamon rolls. So until our dough rises, see you soon.